"Get him out of here. Immediately." The furious voice of the branch manager rang out, shattering the already tense silence in the quiet banking hall. A black man in simple clothes sat calmly but firmly in his chair. That man was Marcus Bell, someone they assumed was just a troublesome customer trying to get a loan. But just hours later, they would learn that the man they had insulted, dismissed, and humiliated was in fact the CEO of Bell & Company, one of the largest financial institutions in America. Marcus had once made a promise to his parents, who had been denied startup loans 7 times simply because of their skin color, that one day he would create a financial institution where everyone had equal opportunity. And he had kept that promise. Starting from nothing, Marcus built Bell & Company into a multi-billion-dollar empire, with over 300 branches nationwide. But on that fateful afternoon, returning to his old neighborhood in Brooklyn to revisit his roots, he overheard a conversation that shattered his worldview. In a small grocery store, 2 black men were talking about their frustrating experiences trying to get loans from Bell & Co. They recounted being denied despite having complete paperwork and solid financials, while white customers were approved within minutes. One of them said, "Bell & Company was supposed to be for people like us. But now it's just like every other bank, only with a nicer name." Marcus stood still. Those words struck him like a blow to the pride and ideals he had built his life upon. Had he failed at his own mission? He made a decision. He wouldn't sit in a high-rise office and judge from afar. He would go undercover, experience everything as an average person, no name, no privilege. Using a flawless loan application, he would pose as a new customer at the branch with the most complaints, to see whether the injustice was real. And if it was, Marcus Bell wouldn't just expose it. He would change everything. The next morning, a professional makeup artist was invited to the temporary apartment Marcus had rented in South Brooklyn. His appearance was subtly altered, a beard was added, some fake acne, and thick glasses that made his eyes look more timid. A loose shirt, worn-out khaki pants, and faded sneakers replaced his $1,000 suit. Even his posture and mannerisms were adjusted, no longer the powerful CEO, but a slightly hunched man with an evasive gaze and a modest tone. The file he carried was meticulously prepared, under the fake name Malcolm Green, complete with flawless financial details, a credit score of 820. A small business operating for 8 years, steady profits, potential contracts, and clear collateral. A file that any loan officer would consider ideal. Standing in front of Bell & Co.'s central branch, the gleaming glass building in the heart of Manhattan's financial district, Marcus couldn't help but feel a lump in his throat. This was where his honor ceremony had been held less than a year ago. But today, he wasn't walking in as the founder. He was just another applicant seeking a loan. The automatic doors opened. The receptionist smiled politely, but not at him. Instead, a white man in business attire who had just walked in behind Marcus was greeted warmly. "Good morning, Mr. Davidson. Has your daughter decided on a college yet?" A smiling female employee stepped forward and shook his hand. Marcus quietly stepped aside, waiting in silence. No one asked him anything. No one invited him to sit. He was handed a loan application packet and told to fill it out and then, wait your turn. In the next 30 minutes, Marcus watched as 3 white customers who arrived after him were immediately taken into consultation rooms. A woman without an appointment was still given a seat. Meanwhile, a black couple sitting across from him looked tired and worn down. Their forms had long been completed. But no one had called their names. Marcus glanced at his watch. 33 minutes. He had expected this undercover mission to be uncomfortable, but he hadn't expected it to be this painful. After more than half an hour of waiting, a cold voice called out from the reception desk. "Malcolm Green? Please proceed to room 3. Mr. Thompson will see you now." Marcus stood up, gave a slight nod, and walked toward the glass office labeled with the advisor's name, Eric Thompson, Assistant Branch Credit Manager. The door closed behind him. Unlike the warm handshakes Marcus was once accustomed to, Eric only glanced at him and gave a quick nod toward the chair across the desk. No greeting, no smile, not even the usual, "How can I help you today?" Marcus opened the file and gently slid it across the desk. "I'm applying for a loan to expand my business. My finances are stable. I have partner contracts, collateral, and here are my income reports." Eric took the file. But instead of reading it, he leaned back in his chair, crossed his arms, and gave Marcus a scrutinizing look, like someone inspecting a potential threat. "You say your business has been operating for 8 years, correct? But I only see financial statements for the past 3 years. Can you prove the previous years?" Eric's voice carried thinly veiled skepticism. Marcus replied calmly, "I have them included in the appendix at the end." But Eric didn't bother to turn the pages. Instead, he gave a faint smirk and pulled out a glossy flyer. "I think our community support loan program might be a better fit for you. It requires only minimum income documentation. No need for complex financial proofs." Marcus looked at the flyer. The loan amount was significantly lower. The interest rate nearly double, and the repayment period much shorter. He asked gently, "I have an 820 credit score, stable profits, full collateral. Why am I not eligible for a standard business loan?" Eric shrugged. "We assess risk based on several factors: industry, social credibility, repayment capability, and frankly, models like yours are generally harder to manage." That sentence cut like a knife. Models like yours, what did that mean? Small business? Black-owned? Or just, not connected to anyone at the bank? Marcus understood exactly what it meant. He folded his hands on the desk, his tone no longer deferential. "I have the right to know why a qualified file is being dismissed with vague excuses. And I'm requesting to speak with a higher-level manager." Eric's voice tightened. "You're becoming difficult. If you persist, I'll have to request security assistance." Marcus didn't respond. He knew he had just struck the nerve, and this performance was about to reach its climax. Before Marcus could respond to Eric's veiled threat, the office door swung open. A security guard stepped in, Daniel, a young Latino man, clearly new on the job, still carrying the uncertain look of someone who hesitates when called into a conflict. "Mr. Thompson, is there a problem?" Daniel asked, his voice soft but concerned. Eric stood up, adjusted his jacket, trying to reassert dominance. "This customer is becoming uncooperative and confrontational. I'm requesting that you escort him out of the premises." Marcus remained seated, his face calm, but his eyes full of resolve. He didn't argue, didn't raise his voice. Instead, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small device, a professional recording camera. Silent and discreet, a tiny red light glowed quietly at its edge. He turned to Daniel and said, "I didn't yell. I didn't insult anyone. I simply asked to speak to a senior manager after being steered toward a worse loan product despite having a fully qualified financial profile. This entire conversation has been recorded." Daniel took a small step back. Surprised, Eric froze, his eyes darting to the recording device as if realizing too late that he had just walked into a trap. "You're not allowed to record inside the bank," Eric muttered stiffly. Marcus smiled slightly. "I'm a U.S. citizen. Federal law doesn't prohibit recording in a public space or for personal protection. As long as it doesn't disrupt operations. And I believe I haven't caused any disturbance, have I?" Daniel scratched his head, clearly flustered, caught between a calm customer who seemed to know the law and a bank employee turning red with embarrassment. He didn't know which side to take. "I think I need to call the branch manager," Daniel said quickly and turned to leave. Less than 2 minutes later, a woman appeared, Linda Prescott, branch manager of Bell & Company Manhattan. Around 50 years old, tall, dressed in a crisp light blue suit. She looked at Marcus, then at Eric. Her expression tightened. "What's going on here?" Linda asked. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried authority. Eric rushed forward, trying to explain himself, but Marcus stood up, removed his glasses, and slowly peeled off the fake beard from his jawline. Linda froze. Her eyes widened. Marcus Bell, CEO and founder of Bell & Co., the man whose portrait hung in the main lobby of this very branch, now stood before her. Dressed in ordinary clothes, still holding the recording device. "Good afternoon, Ms. Prescott," Marcus said, his tone calm but firm. "I think we need to talk. But this time, not as a customer." The bank lobby went silent. Employees around them began to pause, eyes slowly turning toward the scene unfolding. A silent storm had just swept through, and no one knew that this was only the beginning. The silence in the banking hall was shattered by the urgent footsteps of Linda Prescott, the branch manager, as she rushed to escort Marcus into a back meeting room. Her face was tense, hands slightly trembling as she opened the door. Eric remained frozen at the counter, pale as a sheet, while the other employees looked around nervously, unsure what had just happened. A few customers pulled out their phones, scrolling through social media, where tweets with the hashtag Bell discrimination were already starting to trend. Inside the meeting room, Linda shut the door and tried to regain her professional composure. "Mr. Bell, I didn't know you were coming today. If we had known, we would have prepared. You should be glad I didn't announce it," Marcus replied, taking off his glasses and looking her straight in the eyes. "Because what I just experienced wasn't speculation or rumor. It was real, and it happened right here, in the very house I built." Linda swallowed hard. She was someone Marcus had personally appointed to this position 4 years ago. She had once been a true believer in his philosophy of a bank for everyone. But now, her expression was that of someone waking up from a beautiful dream turned sour. Marcus unlocked his phone and played back the audio from his meeting with Eric. The arrogant tone, the racial undertones, the words like, "Someone like you should consider an easier loan, more suited to your situation," and "we need to protect the bank from high-risk applicants who lack credibility." The sound was clear, unmistakable. Linda turned pale. I had no idea you would say such things. I'll take care of it immediately." "No," Marcus cut her off. "It's not just Eric. I sat in that lobby for over 30 minutes. I watched at least 3 white customers get served ahead of me. I watched a black couple who came before me still sitting there. Ignored. Don't tell me this was one bad apple." Linda was silent. Marcus stood up, his eyes glancing out through the frosted glass toward the lobby. "I don't want an apology. I want the truth. And if this system has strayed from its founding values, I won't patch it up. I'll tear it down and rebuild it from scratch." He pulled out his phone again and dialed a private number, one only 5 people in the entire Bell & Company Corporation had access to. The direct line to the top floor of the company's Midtown headquarters. "Evelyn," Marcus said as the call connected. "I'm at the Manhattan branch. I need you to convene an emergency board meeting within 2 hours. Full executive attendance. And send the internal audit team here immediately. We're about to launch a full investigation into discriminatory practices in our branch network." Linda stared at him in shock. On the other end of the line, Evelyn simply replied, "Understood, Marcus. I'll take care of it." Marcus ended the call and turned to Linda. "I'm not leaving until every single customer waiting out there is treated fairly. And as for what comes after," he paused, his gaze sharp as a blade, "you'd better prepare yourself." Out in the lobby, Daniel, the young security guard, was now speaking with the same black couple who had been waiting. When the man locked eyes with Marcus, he gave a subtle nod. No words were spoken, but everything was understood. The first domino had fallen, and the entire Bell & Company system was about to be shaken to its core. At the Bell & Company headquarters on the 52nd floor, known as the brain center of the financial empire, the atmosphere had never been this tense. Just minutes after Marcus's call, assistants began urgently knocking on office doors, summoning executives to an emergency meeting. Evelyn Hart, senior executive director, quickly set up a virtual conference room with major branches in San Francisco, Chicago, and Atlanta. An internal memo was sent out, short but suffocating in tone. Emergency CEO meeting. Mandatory attendance. Effective immediately. Back at the Manhattan branch, Marcus was still sitting in the consultation room, this time beside the Johnsons, the black couple he had seen waiting in silence for nearly an hour. He was no longer playing Malcolm Green. The disguise was gone. His real face left customers and staff alike in stunned disbelief. Some employees murmured in shock, Is that Marcus Bell?" The Johnsons still hadn't fully grasped what was happening. "I'm the founder of this bank," Marcus said, his voice steady and warm. "And today, I'm here to apologize, not as a CEO, but as someone who once believed he had built a fair system. Turns out, I was wrong." No one said a word. Only the heavy silence of people who had once been ignored, now finally being heard. At that very moment, the emergency meeting at headquarters began. The board of directors sat quietly as Marcus appeared on the large screen. No dramatics, no small talk. The Manhattan branch has just had a serious incident. Marcus began. "I went there in disguise as an anonymous black customer and saw with my own eyes how we treat the very community we claim to serve. Discrimination, favoritism, bias, not just present, but spreading like a tumor within our system. Some executives started offering explanations, citing reports, KPIs, customer satisfaction scores, but Marcus raised his hand and cut them off. We've grown too used to seeing the world through data. But today, I don't want your metrics. I have video, audio, proof, a full consultation, recorded, where our loan officer blatantly discriminated. And even referred to the customer as low-life behind his back." The room fell silent, frozen. I didn't build Bell & Company just to sit here and listen to those words come from our staff. Marcus continued, slow and sharp like a blade. "And I won't let anyone use my name to justify injustice." He paused, his eyes scanning every face on the screen. "Starting next week, all branches will be subjected to random audits by an independent investigation team. Anyone found deliberately favoring or discriminating will be suspended immediately, no internal review. We'll also launch the Anonymous Customer program, using identical loan profiles from applicants of different races, genders, and ages to test fairness across the system. And lastly," Marcus said, his voice dropping to a solemn tone, "I will personally review every denied loan application from the past 6 months at our 10 most complained about branches. If we find anyone was unfairly rejected, they'll be contacted, apologized to, and offered the loan they rightfully qualified for." The room was dead silent. No one could hide from the truth anymore. Bell & Company was no longer the perfect example they thought it was. But with this direct blow from its founder, the system would have no choice but to change, not because Marcus Bell was humiliated, but because he refused to let anyone else go through the same thing again. The very next morning, the entire 45th floor of Bell & Company headquarters, where the company's highest-level boardroom was located, lit up earlier than usual. Regional directors, HR heads, the communications chief, and legal representatives were all present and accounted for. On the large screen, Marcus Bell appeared, composed but with an intensity in his eyes that was sharper than ever. This was no longer the friendly CEO known for inspirational speeches today. He was leading a purge. "In front of you," he began, his voice low but firm, "is the result of an experiment that, in an ideal world, should never have been necessary. But it happened, and the truth is, our system has a serious problem." He didn't present reports, no charts, no slideshows. Instead, Marcus played a video clip taken directly from the central branch's security cameras. The receptionist ignoring a black customer. The friendly greeting given to a white customer, complete with small talk about his daughter's college. A qualified applicant, Marcus himself, being redirected to a high-interest loan package simply because of vague assumptions about risk factors. The room fell completely silent, not out of surprise, but shame. A few stole glances at each other. Some lowered their heads. Marcus turned off the video. He didn't need to say more, the truth was clear enough. Eleanor, the compliance director, stood up to speak. "Starting today, the central branch will suspend operations for 72 hours to allow for internal investigation. Every loan denial from the past 6 months will be reviewed. Any that meet approval standards will be re-evaluated immediately, along with a formal apology from the company." Marcus walked around the boardroom table, pausing in front of a large screen displaying the Bell & Company logo. "I named this company after my family," he said, "and I will not allow that name to be associated with discrimination, conscious or unconscious." Then, as if issuing a final command, "From today on, I don't want loyalty, I want courage. Anyone in this room who thinks this was just an isolated incident, please leave now." No one stood up. The heavy air in the room marked the moment of rebirth for a corporation, and the first step in a full-scale reform. 3 days later, Marcus returned to the central branch, this time with no disguise, no silence. He walked into the lobby wearing his signature blue shirt, the CEO badge gleaming on his chest. All employees stopped what they were doing, stood up, eyes filled with a mix of surprise and caution. "Carry on," he said with a gentle smile. "I'm just dropping by." But this visit was far from simple. Marcus had come with a newly signed initiative launched that very morning. Rebuild, a 90-day internal reform program focused on 3 pillars: equity training, bias audits, and trust restoration. Every employee, from the reception desk to upper management, was required to complete an intensive 12-hour hands-on training program. It included simulated scenarios, mystery clients, and real-time behavioral analysis. No more boring compliance videos. These were real lessons, drawn from Marcus's own experience. Regional managers were given transparent performance metrics: how much the approval rate for qualified minority applicants had increased, how customer experience was being rated at each branch, and which negative feedback remained unresolved after 48 hours. Those had to be reported directly to headquarters. Marcus also established a nationwide mystery customer network. Individuals who would pose as clients and record their real-life experiences at Bell & Company branches across the U.S. Even the smallest infraction reported in these logs could result in a branch manager losing their job. Within 2 weeks, Bell & Company began to transform. Customer service in branches changed. Loan application processes were automated and tightly monitored. But most importantly, a sense of responsibility returned. Because everyone now understood. If Marcus Bell was willing to come down to the lobby over a single loan application, then nothing was too small to ignore. The reform had begun. And this time, no one could afford to stay on the sidelines. 1 week after the reform rollout, Marcus Bell appeared on national television in a special interview on CNN Business. No dramatic lighting, no corporate backdrop, just a simple frame, a CEO looking directly into the camera. Speaking with a steady, deep voice filled with sincerity. I failed to properly oversee the very system I created. When my customers, people who started where I did, are treated differently. It's not just a mistake. It's a betrayal. No apology could undo a long history of inequality. But Marcus didn't stop at saying sorry. He acted. More than 300 customers who had been wrongly denied loans were invited to meet directly with senior leadership at major branches. Each received a handwritten apology letter from Marcus himself, along with a commitment to a fair and transparent re-evaluation of their applications. The black couple who had waited silently alongside Marcus that day, the Johnsons, were approved for a $150 loan and were offered a long-term partnership with the bank. They cried at the consultation desk, not because of the money but because, for once, they felt seen and respected. But the most notable development came in the 3rd week. Marcus signed an executive order to establish the Internal Financial Equity Committee, an entirely independent body with the authority to suspend any employee who violated fair access principles, including regional directors. A wave of investigations and reassignments followed. Several mid-level managers at other branches were removed after confidential data from the mystery customer system was released. This was no PR stunt. This was a real reform, with structure, with backbone, and with teeth. Part 10. The Founder and the Example. In the 2nd month after the crisis, Bell & Company began appearing in the news, no longer under headlines of scandal, but of transformation. The media called it the first real cultural renaissance in the U.S. financial sector this decade. Loan approval rates rose by 12% in areas with majority black and minority populations. Complaints about employee attitude dropped by 46% in just 30 days. Most importantly, an internal survey revealed that over 70% of staff felt the workplace had become more transparent and fair. Marcus continued his new routine. Each week, he visited a random branch without notice. No disguise this time. He walked quietly, sat among customers, listened, observed. Staff who once ignored customers now greeted him with genuine respect. Not because of his title, but because they had learned something. And then, one day, Marcus returned to the small grocery store in Brooklyn, the place where this whole story began. The 2 men from that day were still sitting there, sipping coffee from plastic cups, their eyes now a little less weary. Marcus walked up, this time not hiding who he was. He reached out his hand and said, "I'm Marcus Bell, and I owe you both a thank you." At first, they were stunned. But after a few minutes of conversation, the tension faded. Marcus listened to their stories, then handed them a business card, one with the direct number to the CEO's office printed on it. "Your loan applications have been reviewed. We'll call you first thing tomorrow morning," he told them. The next day, They received the funding they had once only dreamed of. Not as a favor, but as something they should have been granted long ago. And in that moment, Marcus understood something deeply. Change doesn't start with policies. It starts with listening, and the courage to take responsibility. From the perspective of a corporate culture expert and crisis communication strategist, Marcus Bell's story isn't just another compelling, undercover boss episode. It's a living case study about the gap between slogans and reality. For over 2 decades, Bell & Company had been praised as a model of progressive banking. But just one afternoon in disguise was enough for the CEO to uncover systemic flaws, right at its core. What sets this story apart isn't that Marcus discovered a problem, because issues like this are far from rare in the financial industry. The difference lies in how he responded. There were no hollow press conferences. No overworked PR team trying to whitewash mistakes. Instead, action, structural change, direct confrontation. From a communication standpoint, Marcus didn't frame the narrative as a triumphant return from a social experiment. He spoke as a father, as a founder, as someone who once believed his mission couldn't be derailed until it clearly had. For the business world, the lesson from Bell & Co. is chillingly clear. Never believe that internal surveys, KPIs, or diversity reports tell the whole truth. They are only the surface. Real culture is revealed by how employees behave when they think no one is watching. Marcus dared to step down to the ground floor and see it all with his own eyes. And he discovered something that very few CEOs are willing to admit. It wasn't the system that betrayed him. It was his blind faith in the system that allowed the betrayal to happen. The story of Bell & Company deserves a permanent place in every leadership training curriculum. Not just as a case study, but as a warning. You can build an empire on trust, but it can crumble the moment you stop questioning yourself.